Welcome to the History AI Podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Welcome back to the History AI Podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. And today, we're riding into the medieval world with a man who somehow managed to be everywhere, survive everything, and come out the other side looking like the final boss of chivalry.
Before we charge straight into the tourney field, do us a quick favor. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening, and if you like the show, leave us a 5-star review.
Seriously, 5 stars, not 4.5. Not I would, but I'm emotionally unavailable. 5.
A 5-star review helps the podcast grow, it helps new listeners find us, and it keeps Marco from taking up jousting as a hobby.
I already have the lance. I'm just waiting for my horse to arrive in 2-day shipping.
Also, we've got new merchandise. There's a link in the show notes, and if you've got topic ideas, you can suggest them to us on social media. And as always, our episodes are evergreen. Whether you're listening today, next month, or in 10 years, the story still hits.
Because betrayal, ambition, and how is this guy still alive are timeless.
Today's episode, William Marshal, 1st Earl of Pembroke. The man who went from being a landless younger son, basically medieval intern with a dream, to becoming one of the most powerful figures in England and the regent for a child king.
He's the kind of person where if you pitched his life to a producer, they'd say, okay, but it's unrealistic for one guy to be that central to history.
And yet, here we are. And be sure to stay tuned after the episode for the original song, The Unbroken Lance. So let's start with what makes William Marshal such a big deal. People call him the greatest knight,
which sounds like a title you win in a tournament bracket. Like, congratulations, you've unlocked greatest knight. Your reward is more problems.
It's also one of those claims that makes historians squint a little. But in his case, it's not just medieval hype. We have unusually rich material for him, including a long biography written not too long after his death. Basically, a medieval authorized life story commissioned by his family.
So he has better PR than most people in the 12th century.
Exactly. Still, the broad arc is solid. He's around the centers of power under 4 kings, Henry II, Richard I, John, and then he becomes regent for Henry III.
That's like serving under 4 CEOs during non-stop corporate warfare, and you're somehow still the guy they trust with the keys when everything catches fire.
And everything did catch fire. This is the Plantagenet world. Family feuds, rebellions, castles changing hands like borrowed tools, and the church watching like the ultimate HR department, but with excommunication.
You have violated policy. You are now spiritually fired.
William Marshal is born around the mid-1100s. He's not the heir. He's a younger son, which is important because younger sons in noble families had limited options.
Right. If you're not inheriting the big estate, you've got basically the medieval career fair. You can join the church, join a lord's household as a warrior, or become a professional tournament machine and hope you don't die.
William's early life is dramatic even by medieval standards. As a child, during a civil war in England, the period known as the Anarchy, when King Stephen and Empress Matilda fought for the throne, William's father ends up in a situation where young William is used as a hostage.
Which is the least cute version of bringing your kid to work.
The story goes that the opposing side threatened the child's life to force the father's surrender, and the father, who was not winning a parenting award, essentially called their bluff.
That is ice cold.
The child survives. But that moment tells you something about the world he grows up in. Loyalty is conditional, power is violent, and survival is a skill.
So William learns early, okay, I might need to be useful to people, like extremely useful.
As a young man, William is sent to be trained in a knightly household. This matters because knighthood isn't just pick up sword, swing sword. It's social, it's etiquette, it's horse mastery, it's weapon training, it's networking.
It's LinkedIn, but with spear wounds.
Exactly. And one of the big ways ambitious knights built their reputations was the tournament circuit. Not the polite, ceremonial jousts we imagine with fancy pageantry, though there was pageantry, but a lot of tournaments were closer to organized chaos. Teams, mass melees, capturing opponents for ransom.
So it's less sport and more high-risk medieval gig economy.
And William is very, very good at it. He builds a name, wins money, gains followers, and becomes the kind of knight you want on your side.
Which leads to his first big step up, royal service.
William ends up serving Henry II, the powerhouse king who ruled England and huge parts of France. Henry II is brilliant, controlling, and constantly dealing with family drama.
That is the nicest way to describe what is basically a man running an empire while his sons try to overthrow him.
Henry II gives William a critical assignment. He becomes mentor and military companion to Henry's eldest surviving son, known as the Young King.
This is one of my favorite medieval quirks. They literally crowned the heir while the father was still alive. Like, congratulations, you're king, except you can't do anything.
The Young King has the title but not real authority, and he's restless. He's also charismatic, flashy, and loves tournaments. William Marshal becomes his right-hand man, which is a tricky position.
Because if the prince is a wild card, you're basically the adult in the room. The adult holding a sword.
William's reputation grows under the Young King. But the Young King's life is chaotic. He rebels against his father, gets dragged into conflicts, then reconciles, then rebels again. William is caught in the middle of some of the most dangerous political crossfire in Europe.
And somehow William doesn't just survive, he's trusted.
There's a story, probably shaped by later storytelling, but still meaningful, where William is accused of having an affair with the Young King's wife. That accusation could ruin him or get him killed.
Court rumor in the medieval world is not people talking. It's people talking while sharpening knives.
William ultimately emerges from the scandal intact, which suggests either the accusation was false, or he navigated it with extraordinary care, or both.
Or he just has that rare talent of making enemies hesitate, because they know he's competent.
After the Young King dies, William is no longer tied to that role, and he moves through service to other royals. Importantly, Henry II's son Richard, who becomes Richard I.
Richard the Lionheart. The name alone sounds like a movie trailer.
Richard is a crusader king, a warrior king, but he's also pragmatic, and he recognizes value. William is exactly the kind of experienced, loyal, hard-edged knight Richard needs.
In the medieval world, competence is currency. William is basically walking gold.
Under Richard, William continues to rise. But the real twist comes later, because after Richard's reign, after all the crusading and ransom and dramatic stuff, England ends up with King John.
Oh boy, King John. The human embodiment of things gonna get worse.
John is complicated, but his reign is marked by political disaster, lost territories, heavy taxation, conflict with the church, conflict with barons. The tensions culminate in Magna Carta.
The document that people either treat like the birth certificate of modern liberty or like a medieval customer complaint letter.
It's both more specific and more important than those extremes. But what matters for William Marshal is he is serving John in the years when the kingdom is fracturing.
So William is now working for the guy everybody's mad at, while also trying not to be hated by everybody else.
Exactly. And here's what makes William so fascinating. He's a loyalist, but he's also a stabilizer. He understands that if everything collapses, nobody wins, not even the people who think they're winning.
That's the difference between a warrior and a statesman. William is both.
When John dies, the situation is dire. England is effectively in civil war. A foreign prince, Louis of France, has been invited by rebel barons and is in England, claiming the throne. The legitimate heir, Henry III, is a child.
This is the part where, in any normal story, the kingdom falls apart.
And that's where William Marshal steps into his most famous role, regent. He becomes the man governing in the name of the boy king.
Imagine being like in your 70s, because William is old by medieval standards, and being handed the most cursed job in Europe. Please fix the civil war, the invasion, and the legitimacy crisis.
William does something brilliant. He uses Magna Carta, not as a surrender, but as a tool. He reissues a version of it in Henry III's name.
Which is politically genius, because it signals we're listening without handing the entire government to the rebels.
It helps peel away support from the rebels, because now the crown is offering reforms and stability. Meanwhile, William moves militarily.
And this is where the greatest knight part really earns its reputation.
In 1217, forces loyal to the young Henry III face the rebels and the French at the Battle of Lincoln. William Marshal leads.
A 70-ish-year-old leading a major battle. That's not retirement plan. That's, I will die at work, apparently.
The battle is a decisive royalist victory. It's sometimes called Lincoln Fair because they capture so many wealthy opponents, it becomes a kind of grim payday.
Medieval capitalism, win battle, seize ransom, go shopping.
There's also a naval engagement not long after, often linked with cutting off French support. And the combined pressure forces Louis to negotiate and leave.
So William, at the end of his life, saves the dynasty.
He stabilizes the realm, reinforces the legitimacy of Henry III, and sets England on a path where the monarchy survives a moment that could have ended it.
Okay, but here's what I always wonder. When people say the greatest knight, are they talking about him as a fighter or as a symbol?
Both. As a fighter, he's clearly formidable. The tournament career, the battlefield leadership, the reputation among peers. But as a symbol, he represents something medieval society desperately wanted to believe in, that a man could be loyal, brave, honorable, and still succeed.
Which is funny, because medieval politics is basically a blender full of betrayal.
Right? That's why the Marshal story resonates. He's not naive, he's practical, but he's also committed to an ideal of service that people could admire.
So he's like the rare person who uses the system without becoming completely warped by it.
Exactly. And he's also a great example of social mobility within a rigid society. Not from peasant to king, but from landless younger son to earl and regent.
The medieval grind set.
Please never say medieval grind set again.
I will absolutely say it again.
William Marshal dies not long after securing the kingdom. He's remembered with deep respect, and his family becomes one of the great noble houses.
And there's also something poignant about his end. He's a man who spent his life in violence and power struggles, yet he's remembered for upholding a certain standard.
He's the kind of figure who reminds us that history isn't just about kings making decrees. It's also about the people who keep the wheels from coming off.
The human duct tape of the Middle Ages.
That might be the most accurate description of a regent I've ever heard.
Thank you. Put it on my gravestone. Marco, human duct tape.
So why does William Marshal matter today, evergreen style? Because his story is about competence, loyalty, and navigating impossible politics without losing your core.
It's about surviving systems that reward chaos and still choosing to be the person who stabilizes things.
It's also about reputation, how it's built, how it's attacked, how it's defended. William's life shows that your brand, for lack of a better word, mattered just as much in the 12th century as it does now.
Except your bad tweet was replaced by someone accuses you at court and you get stabbed.
And unlike today, there was no delete and apologize strategy.
There was, but it was called ride away quickly.
That's our episode on William Marshal, 1st Earl of Pembroke, tournament legend, royal counselor, battlefield commander, and the regent who saved a dynasty at the edge of collapse.
A man who lived through peak medieval chaos and somehow made it look like a job he could do before breakfast.
Before we go, special thanks to everyone listening. We genuinely appreciate you spending time with us.
And if you enjoyed the episode, please rate and subscribe. And yes, we're going to say it again. Leave a 5-star review. It really does help the podcast grow.
Share the show with a friend who loves medieval history, political drama, or stories where the supporting character turns out to be the main reason anything works at all.
Also, we've got new merchandise, link in the show notes, and you can suggest future topics to us on social media. We love hearing what you want next.
And remember, every episode is evergreen. Come back anytime and it'll still be here waiting. No expiration date, no news cycle, just history.
History, the one subscription you can't cancel.
We'll catch you next time on the History AI Podcast.
With no crown, no name to defend, a fourth son riding where legends would end. No lands to inherit, no gold in his hand, just steel in his heart and the weight of a man. From tourney to tourney he carved out his place, dust on his armor but fire in his face. Knocked kings to their knees in the tilt of a fight, A ghost in the chaos, a storm in the light. No banner above him, no kingdom his own, but every man there knew the strength he had shown. Raise up the lance for the man who would stand through fire and crown in the fall of the land. Through kings who would rise and kings who would fall. He never bent, he outlived them all. From nothing he came, through battle he roared. Now history whispers the name of a lord. William Marshal, remember it well. The knight who walked through heaven and hell. He served the young king through glory and flame, watched as ambition devoured the name. Rebellion and whispers, betrayal and scars, yet still he rode forward beneath broken stars. Accused and abandoned, but never undone, he stood in the court when the trial had begun. I fought for my honor, his voice like a blade, and silence fell heavy for the stand that he made. They tried to erase him, to bury his name, but iron like his doesn't rust in the rain. Raise up the lance for the man who would stand through fire and crown and the fall of the land. Through kings who would rise and kings who would fall. He never bent, he outlived them all. From nothing he came, through battle he roared. Now history whispers the name of a lord. William Marshal, remember it well. The knight who walked through heaven and hell. Old now, but still with a sword at his side. When England was shaking, he turned back the tide. At Lincoln he rode like the years never passed. A legend reborn in the shadow of last. A kingdom in chaos, a boy on the throne. He carried the crown though it wasn't his own. No king, no crown, just honor that never bowed down. Raise up the lance for the man who would stand through fire and crown in the fall of the land. Through kings who would rise and kings who would fall. He never bent, he outlived them all. From nothing he came, through battle he roared. Now history whispers the name of a lord. William Marshal, remember it well. The knight who walked through heaven and hell. Oh. Laid down his sword, but the story remains. A life forged in iron, remembered in names. Not born to be great, but he answered the call, and history crowned him the greatest of all.